Mrs. Whitman, how do you feel about your husband sleeping with his assistant? That question, shouted by a reporter on the courthouse steps, ripped through the air like a knife. Flashbulbs burst. My heels hit the concrete harder than they should have. But I didn't stop walking. I kept my chin high, my eyes focused, and my hands clenched around the strap of my purse so tightly I thought it might snap. Before we dive in, a warm thank you to all my subscribers. Your support helps bring these emotional and deeply human stories to life. If you haven't already, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what's coming. My name is Alicia Whitman, though most people around DC knew me as the wife of Peter Whitman, the golden boy of our state's legal world. He was the district attorney with a perfect conviction record, a blinding smile, and a public image polished like chrome. And me? I was the polished wife, former top-of-my-class law graduate turned housewife, always standing one step behind him at campaign events, dinners, or televised interviews. I smiled when I needed to. I wore pearls when they told me to. I answered questions about our kids like that was the only story I had to offer. Until the story changed. It was a Monday morning in June when everything began to unravel. I was packing my son's lunch when my phone exploded with messages. The first headline read, "Breaking, District Attorney Peter Whitman accused of misconduct, affair with young staffer services." By 8:13 a.m., every major news station was outside our home. By 9 o'clock, Peter had already left in his black Escalade with his lawyer and his pride. And I had to get dressed, pull my hair back, and walk down those courthouse steps beside him for the cameras. Not because I wanted to, but because the alternative was letting the world assume I was falling apart. Spoiler, I was. Peter didn't deny it. Not the affair, not the hotel charges, not the emails found on his work laptop. The girl, Samantha Hale, was barely 25 and a recent law school grad. She used to bring us cookies during the campaign trail. I once held her hand and told her she had a bright future. I had no idea she was sleeping with my husband at the time. The worst part wasn't that Peter cheated. It was that he used my trust, my silence, and my reputation to help build his. All those years I stayed home with our kids while he climbed the ladder. I believed we were building something together. But really, I was just the wallpaper in the house he was showing off. After the press conference, I went to my mother's house with my children. Peter stayed at a hotel. He texted me something like, "We'll talk soon." "I'm sorry." I didn't respond. What do you even say to that? That night, I stood alone in my childhood bedroom, watching old news clips of us. Campaign rallies, victory speeches, our 10th anniversary gala. And in every one of them, I was there, smiling, holding his arm, playing the part of the supportive wife. But none of them showed what happened afterward. Like how he barely made it home before 10. Or how we hadn't touched each other in months. Or how I cried in the bathroom after every event, wondering when I stopped being his partner and started being a prop. The world didn't see those parts. Only I did. The next morning, I made a decision. I dug out my law degree, dusted off my resume, and called a former classmate, Natalie Cohen, who now worked at a top DC firm. "I'm ready to come back," I told her. There was silence on the other end. Then she said, "About damn time." That's how it started, my return. Not out of ambition, but survival. I needed to be more than his wife. I needed to be Alicia again. What I didn't know was that going back to work would unravel more secrets than I was prepared for. Because stepping back into the legal world meant stepping into a courtroom full of whispers, memories, and shadows from my marriage I hadn't dared to confront. But that's a story for next chapter. Returning to work after 13 years felt like walking back into a room I used to know in the dark. Everything had shifted. The desks were sleeker, the suits sharper, and the conversations somewhat colder. But the real change was me. I was no longer the bright-eyed associate trying to prove herself. I was Alicia Whitman, wife of the disgraced district attorney. Everyone knew my name, not for my skill, but for my scandal. And that stung more than I cared to admit. Before we dive deeper, thank you again to all my subscribers and gifters for supporting these powerful, raw life stories. If you haven't yet, subscribe and turn on notifications to help keep them coming. Cohen and Ward LLP, where I got my second chance, was a high-rise fortress overlooking downtown DC. The lobby smelled like marble and money. My first day back, I wore a tailored navy suit and heels that hurt like hell, but I needed the armor. Natalie met me in the elevator with a warm smile. "You ready to show them you're more than a headline?" she asked. I nodded, but the truth was, I wasn't sure. I spent the first week going over briefs and research files like I was cramming for an exam. My legal instincts kicked in faster than I thought. It was like the part of me that had been asleep for over a decade suddenly woke up, hungry. But the whispers never stopped. In the break room, in the elevator, even in the bathroom stalls. "That's her, Peter Whitman's wife. He cheated on her with that intern, right? She looks so composed. Must be acting." I ignored them. Mostly. One night, a week into the job, I stayed late working on a civil suit involving medical negligence. The office was mostly empty. Just me, a cleaning lady, and Greg Lancaster, a junior partner I barely knew. He walked past my desk and then doubled back. "Mrs. Whitman." "It's Alicia," I corrected gently. He nodded.
"Saudi."
"Alicia. I just wanted to say, people around here might be talking, but some of us, we know what it's like to rebuild. You're not alone." I forced a smile. "Thanks." But it didn't feel like comfort. It felt like pity wrapped in a compliment. I didn't want to be inspiring. I wanted to be invisible, at least for a little while. That night, back at my apartment, because I still hadn't returned to our marital home, I sat with a glass of wine and opened Peter's old laptop. I wasn't proud of it, but I needed answers. What started as curiosity quickly turned to nausea. There weren't just emails to Samantha. There were folders. Dozens. Labeled with women's names, dates, and even venues. Hotels. Airports. Even our vacation home. My husband hadn't just had an affair. He had a system. A spreadsheet-style breakdown of betrayal. I slammed the laptop shut and stared at the ceiling for a long time. Rage bubbled in my chest like boiling water. Not because he had cheated again and again, but because I had defended him, stood beside him when the first scandal broke, like some fool in pearls and red lipstick. He hadn't just lied to the public. He'd lied to me, in layers so thick I didn't even know what was real anymore. The next morning, I walked into the firm with a different kind of posture. Stronger. Sharper. Because now I wasn't just fighting to find myself. I was preparing for war. They say betrayal changes a person. But it's not just the pain. It's the clarity. After I found Peter's hidden folders, I stopped second-guessing myself. I stopped defending his name in my head. I stopped hoping. It was time to confront him. Not for closure. Not even for answers. But because I needed to see if he would still lie to my face, even when I already knew the truth. I met Peter in his office. His new office. Smaller, stripped of the power he used to carry like a second skin. He stood when I entered, nervous in a way only a man with everything to hide could be. "Alicia," he said. "You look good." I didn't respond to that. I sat, straight-backed, and opened the folder I'd brought with me. "These names," I said, sliding the first few pages toward him. "You recognize them?" He looked at the papers and paled. His hand trembled slightly. "Where did you? Does it matter?" I asked, cutting him off. "What matters is what you're going to say next." He exhaled, slow and tired, like the air had been punched out of him. "I never wanted to hurt you," he said. A cliché. I waited. Peter leaned back in his chair. "It wasn't just sex. Some of them, most of them, it was validation.
Ego."
I felt like I was fading. "You were so good, so whole. I felt like a ghost in your light." That made me flinch. Not out of guilt, but out of the sheer selfishness of his logic. "You made me your excuse?" I asked quietly. He rubbed his eyes.
"No."
I kept looking for someone who made me feel seen, even if it was a lie. I stood up to leave. But then he said something I'll never forget. "There was one woman," he said, "who wasn't like the others." I stopped cold. "She was different," he said. We connected. I started thinking about a future with her. I even considered leaving the marriage, but it fell apart before I had to choose. Her name? I asked. He hesitated. Then, Natalie. My stomach twisted. Natalie. I repeated. My friend? The one who got me the job. He nodded, shame burning across his face. It ended before you came back to work.
But yes.
It was real. I think part of her helping you get hired was guilt. I walked out before he could say another word. I walked fast, nearly running. The world outside looked the same, but I felt like gravity had changed. Like I was floating in a storm. That night, I confronted Natalie. She didn't deny it.
She cried.
She said she ended it the minute the affair started feeling real. I never meant to fall for him, she said. I tried to stop it. I tried to fix it by helping you. But I was wrong. So wrong. Her words didn't matter. Because she wasn't just a friend. She was the one person I had confided in when everything fell apart. She was the one I had trusted with my secrets. Now she was another name in the betrayal. Alone in my apartment, I sat on the floor with a bottle of wine and cried harder than I had the night the scandal broke. Because this betrayal wasn't public. It wasn't loud. It was personal. It was private. It was intimate. That's the thing no one tells you about infidelity. It's not the act itself. It's the web of lies. The moments stolen. The trust shattered by people you thought would never swing the hammer. And that night I realized something. Peter might have destroyed our marriage. But Natalie had destroyed something even deeper. My faith in friendship.
We all wear masks.
Some to hide our pain. Others to project power.
But mine?
Mine was forged in betrayal. I wasn't Alicia, the governor's wife, anymore. I wasn't the woman who cried behind closed doors while cameras captured Peter's redemption tour. I wasn't even Alicia, the scorned friend. I became someone else entirely. Someone unshakable. The morning after confronting Natalie, I showed up at the law firm in a tailored navy dress, heels that clicked like thunder, and a face that dared anyone to question me. People watched me. Whispers followed. I knew what they were thinking. Isn't she the one whose husband?
Yes,
I was. But I wasn't here to be pitted. I was here to win. My first big case as second chair came 2 weeks later. A high-profile divorce between a tech CEO and his wife. Irony? Definitely. But I poured myself into the work like it was a lifeline. The senior partner, David Lawton, noticed. You've got steel under that smile, he said during a break.
No.
Just experience, I replied.
And it was true.
Heartbreak teaches you how to fight with precision, to smile while bleeding, to win without mercy. I started staying late, volunteering for every tough case, rising through the ranks, not because I loved the law, but because every success felt like armor over my wounds. But at night, the mask slipped. I'd come home to a silent apartment, toss my heels aside, and scroll through old photos I couldn't bear to delete. Peter holding the kids. Natalie hugging me at a birthday party. Lies frozen in time. I didn't cry anymore. I stared at them like a detective, searching for clues I missed. I had become obsessed with one question. When did it all start to rot? Then came the email. It was short. Just a few lines from an unknown sender. I know what Peter did to you, but you don't know everything. If you want the truth, meet me. Tuesday, 8 p.m. The Lantern. No name. No attachments. Just a location. I stared at it for an hour. Was it a prank? A threat? Or a trap? But curiosity has a way of cutting through fear. And despite everything I'd endured, I still wanted answers. The Lantern was a quiet bar tucked in a corner of the city. Dim lights, whiskey on every shelf, and the kind of silence that swallowed secrets. I walked in 5 minutes early. At exactly 8 p.m., a woman in her early 30s slid into the seat across from me. She was pale, nervous, biting her lip like it was a habit she'd never broken. You don't know me, she said. But I know Peter. My pulse quickened. He didn't just cheat with random women, she whispered. There was something else. A group. The men in politics. They traded more than favors. I leaned in. What are you saying? Her eyes filled with tears. He wasn't just unfaithful. He was dangerous. And I was one of the women used to keep powerful men silent. My stomach dropped. This wasn't just betrayal. This was conspiracy. Back in my apartment, I couldn't sleep. If what she said was true, Peter's infidelity wasn't the whole story. It was just the beginning. All my efforts to rebuild myself, every courtroom victory, every sharpened mask, suddenly felt fragile. Because beneath all that power, I was still tethered to a man who had dark secrets I hadn't begun to uncover. And now, I had to decide. Do I let it go? Or do I go deeper, no matter the cost? We spend our lives chasing the truth about love, about betrayal, about ourselves. But sometimes, the truth isn't a light. Sometimes, it's a wildfire. And once it starts burning, nothing is ever the same again. The woman at the lantern, her name was Claire. She used to be a political aide. Brilliant, ambitious, and disposable. Her story shattered whatever illusion I had left about Peter. He wasn't just unfaithful, he was complicit. Part of a quiet, powerful circle that protected each other's sins. She showed me documents, photos, bank transactions. It was no longer just a scandal. It was a buried system of manipulation, and Peter had played his part. Why come to me? I asked. She hesitated. Because you were the only one who walked away with dignity. You still have a voice. Use it. And for the first time in a long time, I realized I did. The next few weeks were a blur. I handed Claire's evidence to an investigative journalist I trusted. I distanced myself from my old legal firm, too many ties to politics. Too many chances for things to go missing. Peter called me once. His voice was low, steady, controlled. Like he knew everything was slipping away, but still thought he could charm his way out. I made mistakes, he said. But this
will ruin me.
I almost laughed. You ruined yourself, Peter. I just stopped covering for you.
Click.
What followed was chaos. News stations lit up. Headlines screamed. Governor's past exposed in political sex cover-up. Whistleblower alleges pattern of abuse and corruption. Peter resigned 2 weeks later. The press circled like vultures. Our children, now old enough to understand more than they should, stayed with my mother. I didn't want them anywhere near the media frenzy. Through it all, I stayed silent. Not because I was afraid, but because I wanted to speak on my own terms. And I did. 1 month later, I gave a single interview. Not as Peter Florrick's wife. Not as a political victim. But as a woman who chose truth over comfort. I believed in loyalty, I said. I built a life around someone else's image. But when that image shattered, I realized I'd lost myself in the cracks. This isn't about revenge. It's about reclamation. That interview went viral. Not because it was scandalous, but because it was honest. And sometimes, honesty is the loudest voice in the room. Today, I live in a quieter place. Somewhere outside Chicago. I still practice law, but on my own terms. I take on cases for women like Claire, those who've been used, dismissed, broken. And I sleep better. Not because everything is perfect, but because I'm finally me. I forgave Peter. Not because he deserved it, but because I refused to carry his sins any longer. I forgave Natalie, too. I don't know where she is now.
I don't need to.
And Claire? She runs a foundation now. One that protects women in politics. She tells me I gave her a platform, but really, she gave me something too. A reminder that broken doesn't mean defeated. So, if you've made it this far, thank you for walking this road with me. This wasn't just my story. It could be anyone's story. Because betrayal doesn't end you. Sometimes, it's just the beginning. That's the end.